In 1970, a woman is strangled to death and buried in a shallow grave out in Florida. From there, for the next 35 years, bodies would be found across different states. It would take decades before these cases would be solved and finally connected to one man. This is Samuel Little, also known as Samuel McDowell.
I grabbed her by the legs and pulled her to the water.
I'll never in my life ever interview another killer like that in my career.
Oh, the only thing I know in all is that I killed her.
And that was your intent?
That was my intent.
We know of at least 93 women who were murdered. He was not going to stop. He actually told police that he found it sexually satisfying to kill women.
Did you ever shoot any of these girls?
Shoot.
Yeah, with a gun?
I get no kick out of shooting.
All right. So everything was done by manual strangulation. Did you ever use like a belt or a cloth or
No
anything?
garrots and all that, no.
No ligatures at all?
My hands.
Just your
And
hands?
without that, I wouldn't want to do it.
The reason Sam Little went undetected for so many years is because of who he targeted, primarily drug-addicted women and sex workers.
They didn't know who the hell was doing it.
Yeah. Yes.
He knew which women would be not cared about. He knew which women would not be missed. He knew which women would be susceptible to his advances, either whether they're romantic or he was providing them drugs, providing them alcohol. He knew which women on the lower levels of our society he could actually lure into his car to take to a secluded place, to quickly kill them in the dead of night where nobody could see them.
As long as you didn't get in out there with them people that would be immediately missed and very important to either family or business.
After Samuel Little is arrested in 2012 on a narcotics charge, investigators realize he's actually responsible for several cold case killings. Little was a man who had been arrested almost 100 times and only spent a total of 10 years behind bars.
I was lucky in Florida. I had a dead body in the car. Got to get the choked out. Yes, and I'm getting ready. Boom, 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 blue lights everywhere. Police car and come back behind the building. I jumped out the car and tried to act like I was zipping my pants. He said, "Oh, what the fuck? What's going on over here?" I said, "Nothing." I said, "Me and my wife just got in the course." Put the damn car, looked in that window with a flashlight, I'm telling you. Shining right on the girl. She lay up there like that.
And she's dead.
Dead.
Yeah.
And as soon as he was looking in there, I said, "Yeah, right here." I got his mind off. Just in the nick of time before he took a second look. And I got away like that. He said, "Well, you got to get out of him."
The police weren't able to put together a strong case against him because he himself knew how to get away without leaving a lot of evidence.
He would initially strike his victims in the head and then strangle them. And I think ultimately, when you think about this, you're not going to have any forensic evidence later.
DNA didn't really start being utilized until the mid-1990s.
I would blame partially the criminal justice system because a lot of the cases against him were dismissed, they weren't followed up with, and he was fleeing constantly.
Little had had close calls before, but nothing may have come as close as to when he was directly tied to two brutal murders.
Now, when you're driving around with Patricia Mount in the front passenger seat, did you have any conversation with her?
My mind was on killing her.
After Patricia Mount's nude body was found in that hayfield, hair fibers and witness testimony linked Little to the killing, and he went on trial. Yet once again, it was Little's lucky day. The jury found him not guilty. Samuel Little, who's come to be known as the most prolific serial killer in United States history and whose crime spree spanned from 1970 to 2005, was able to elude justice for years. That is, until 2012.
The prosecutors and the police were never able to actually pin a case on him until he left his DNA.
California actually had a case where they had run DNA on a cold case, and they had an identical case, or one that was a similar MO. And when they tested that DNA, the DNA came back to an identical person in Sam Little.
In September 2012, Little was arrested in a homeless shelter in Kentucky on an outstanding California drug charge. When he was extradited back to LA, investigators such as Detective Mitzi Roberts were able to link Little's DNA to material left at crime scenes in the 1980s. In 2014, Little was convicted of the murders of 3 of his victims, Carol Alford, Audrey Nelson, and Guadalupe Apodaca. While Little had maintained his innocence his whole life, in 2018, he finally decided to open up to investigators.
What's up, man?
It's so good to meet you, and I'd like to personally thank you for being generous enough with your time. You're so valuable to society at this point, I think.
I'm worth something to these people. I thought it was a worthless thing to them. People saying that I'm worth something.
Now the question became, how do you get Little to open up?
I'd love to talk to you about Gainesville a little bit. You know, that's where I live and work.
I'm not a Gator fan, I'll tell you right now.
You must be Ohio State, though.
Right.
You know what Urban did for our Gators, though.
Ohio State, my guy.
Going to be Little's interview for sure. Wanted to make sure that myself, as a prosecutor, was going to be somebody that he wouldn't mind talking to. We knew that he liked the Cleveland Browns, so that kind of was our cash, if you will, to be able to build this rapport with him.
What do you remember about it?
Talking shit.
Talking.
After serial killer Samuel Little was finally caught in 2012 and convicted of murdering 3 women back in the 1980s, he decided to confess to more of his crimes from 1970 to 2005.
She also talked about a young lady that you dumped down a stairwell.
Yeah, hot girl.
How do we know, though, that Little was actually telling the truth?
He knew everything about my crime in 1982, and then the 1977 remains actually had a wig on. Nobody knew that but the anthropologist and us. And he talks about she had a wig and he threw it out the window after he killed our very first victim. In one other case, he was able to tell what the last item that a lady had eaten was basically the carrots out of a salad and brown coffee. That also was from the 70s.
That must be the blanket.
Yes.
Sitting around talking, and the detective says, yeah, you know, he killed mine. He drew a picture of her. And I said, what year was yours? And he said, 1998. I said, no, it wasn't Sam Little. I said, he was not out in 1998. So when they go into the interview room, and this detective is starting to talk to him about that case, and you know, he looked at it, he goes, oh yeah, I remember her, yeah, but I didn't kill that one. He said, I was gonna kill her.
Did choking with these women happen before the or during or right afterwards? When did it mostly happen?
I choose her out first.
You pick the ones that you think you're going to kill
No,
first?
no. If you want, depends on how I net.